How to play Mork Borg. Hi everyone, this is a special How to Play episode of Firebreathing Kittens podcast. I'm the game master for an upcoming session using the rules for Mork Borg. This episode is a summary of what I learned after reading the rulebook. Hopefully this will be a handy guide for how to play for my players, will help me organize myself, and will be useful for you listeners too, who are looking to play your own Mork Borg game. I'll organize this how to play guide into sections. 1. Game category. 2. Combat rules. 3. 0 hit points. 4. Abilities. 5. Magic. 6. Omens. 7. I will build an example character to show you how that is done. 8. How to level up. Game category. Mork Borg describes itself as a doom metal album of a game. A spiked flail to the face. Rules light, heavy everything else. It's set in a world driven insane by accurate prophecies foretelling the end of days. You'll face goblins, trolls, and blood-drenched skeletons. How will you react to the certain impending death of the world? By robbing graves for soil-stained wealth? Or facing down the apocalypse, hoping it can be fought? You can play as character classes, such as the Esoteric Hermit, Occult Herb Master, or Gutter-born Scum. Your character might be a nihilist, someone who stutters when lying, an inveterate bug eater, or maybe you'll tap into the magic around you and call down some arcane calamities of your own. This is Mork Borg, a tabletop role-playing game famous for its artistic rulebook. Bright yellow, darkest black, blood red. I encourage you all to check out the rulebook, even if only from an art perspective. You've got nothing to lose, because if you don't like that art style, the creators offer a free bare-bones edition that has all the unusual layouts removed. That one's just black font on a white background. But that would be a bit sad. I first heard about Mork Borg from a conversation about which tabletop role-playing game had the most beautiful rulebook. Mork Borg and the spin-offs it has inspired are really something special to look at. So if you haven't browsed this rulebook, give it a try. Maybe hearing this explanation of the rules will help smooth your experience? I don't know. Let's get into it. Combat rules in Mork Borg. All the dice rolls in Mork Borg are made by the players. That includes combat turn order, players attacking an enemy, and when players are defending against being attacked. Everything. The game master doesn't ever have to roll dice. The word initiative means turn order during combat. A player rolls a 6-sided dice, also called a d6, for initiative. A 1, 2, or 3 means the enemies attack first. A 4, 5, or 6 means the players attack first. If there are multiple players, they all roll a d6 and add their agility modifiers. Higher rolls can act first. Attacking an enemy goes like this. First, roll a 20-sided dice, also called a d20. Next, if you're attacking with a melee weapon, add your strength modifier to your roll. If you're attacking with a ranged weapon, add your presence ability modifier to your roll. If the result is 12 or higher, you hit. Roll your weapon's damage dice, something like a d4, d6, etc. Lastly, if the enemy has armor, roll for the armor, which will be a d2, a d4, or a d6, and subtract the armor roll from the damage. Defending when an enemy is trying to hit you goes like this. First, roll a d20. Next, add your agility modifier. If the result is a 12 or higher, they missed you. If the result is 11 or lower, they hit you. Roll for their damage, a d4, a d6, etc. If you have armor, roll for your armor, a d2, a d4, or a d6, and subtract the armor roll from the incoming damage. Rolling a 20 or a 1 on the d20 when attacking or defending is special. A 20 on the to-hit dice is a critical hit. A critical when attacking means you deal twice as much damage, and the enemy's armor or protection is lowered by a tier. A critical when defending means you get a free attack of opportunity. The opposite of a natural 20 critical success is a natural 1 critical failure, a fumble. Fumbling when attacking means your weapon breaks or is lost. Fumbling when defending means you take twice as much damage, and your armor is reduced 1 tier. Enemies don't fight forever in Mork Borg. If they're at 1/3 of their hit points, or if their leader gets killed, or half the group is eliminated, the Game Master will prompt a player to roll 2d6. If the number is greater than the morale number of the enemy, they surrender or flee. Those were the combat rules. Here is an example round of combat. There's a prowler out, a lawless, good-for-nothing crook banished from civilization. Low on resources, allies, and basic decency, the prowler seeks retribution and coin. This particular one is a liar who enjoys stealing one single item from people to mess with them mentally, and they love getting the credit for other people's exploits. All of these personality traits come from random tables in the rulebook, which is a neat way to quickly customize the enemies. Anyway, the door to your inn creaks, and the prowler pokes their head into the room where your party is sleeping, having gained access by lying to the innkeeper, saying that they were a late-arrived member of the party. The prowler looks around the room at everyone's sleeping forms. They reach into a bag and remove a single item, just Keftar's Zweihander sword. The prowler smiles to themselves and begins to creep out of the room. But before that can happen, let's roll for initiative. One of the players rolls a d6. It's a 5. The players each roll a d6 and add their agility to determine their turn order. Keftar has a 6 and is going first. Brint has a 5 and is going second. And Vrak has a 2 and goes third. Keftar's sword is in the prowler's hands, so the first thing Keftar wants to do is a strength roll to grapple the sword out of the prowler's hands. Keftar rolls a d20 and adds their strength modifier. If it's a 12 or higher, they succeed. It's a 15. Success! Keftar wrestles their sword out of the prowler's hands. Brint's turn is next. Brint wields a whip, but when he rolls a 1 on the d20 dice to hit, Brint's player roleplays that as meaning the whip is hard to wield in this small rented inn room. Brint raises the whip overhead and it catches on a lamp. A natural 1 on the d20 means the weapon breaks or is lost. It's hopelessly tangled in the lamp. The last player to act is Vrak's player, who fires their short bow. They roll a d20 and get a 10. Adding 2 from their presence modifier, Vrak's player whoops as they get a 12 overall, meaning Vrak's arrow hits the prowler. Vrak's player rolls a d4 and declares that Vrak has done 3 damage. The GM knows the prowler is down from 8 hit points down to 5 hit points. They're still above 3 HP, so the GM doesn't ask a player to roll for the prowler's morale check. The prowler lifts a filthy short sword and swipes at Brint, who is still tangled in a lamp. Brint rolls to defend, adding their agility to a d20. That's a 7 overall, below a 12, so the prowler hits and deals 5 damage, leaving Brint with exactly 0 hit points. Thus concludes one round of combat in Mork Borg. What happens when a character has 0 hit points in Mork Borg? Brint is at 0 hit points, so this is a great example. Roll a 4-sided dice, also called a d4. If Brint rolls a 1, they're unconscious but will wake up after d4 rounds with d4 hit points. If Brint rolls a 2, they're going to lose a limb or an eye and can't act for d4 rounds, and then after that regain d4 hit points. If Brint rolls a 3, they're hemorrhaging and will die in d2 hours unless they get treated. All tests are a difficulty rating of 16 the first hour and 18 the last hour. And lastly, if Brint rolls a 4, they're simply dead. Thus ends the example combat for Mork Borg. Let's talk about resting. First off, if you're infected, you're not going to heal at all when you rest. Instead, you'll take a d6 of damage every day until you get healed. But, assuming you're not infected and that you have food and water, then you can catch your breath to heal a d4 of hit points, and you can get a full night's sleep to heal a d6 of hit points. Every Mork Borg character has 4 stats. Mechanically, these modifier scores are what you add to or subtract from your d20 dice rolls. How do you know if the thing you attempted was successful in Mork Borg? Roll a dice, add your stats modifier to your roll, and if the number meets or exceeds the difficulty rating, you succeeded. There are 4 abilities: toughness, strength, presence, and agility. Toughness is used for resisting poison, enduring heat and cold, and surviving falling. Strength is used when you're striking with a melee weapon, grappling, crushing, or lifting something. Presence is the ability you use when aiming with a ranged weapon, perceiving things, charming someone, or wielding a magical power. Agility is what you add to a roll when you're defending or dodging an enemy's attack, balancing, swimming, or fleeing. Here is an example of testing your ability in Mork Borg. You fall out of the window of an inn. The cobblestones below are rushing up to you. Roll a d20 and add your toughness modifier. If the result is 12 or higher, you pass. If the result is 11, 10, 9, etc., you fail. For example, a 14 on the dice, minus 1 toughness, is a 13 overall. You're fine. You land with a thud, but stand up, having taken no damage. Magic in Mork Borg might be something your character is able to wield, depending on which class they are. It's present either as a power or a scroll. If your class can wield magic, then each day you roll a d4 and add your presence modifier, and that's how many times that day you can cast it. For example, if you roll a 2 and have a presence modifier of +1, then you can use your scroll 3 times today. When you go to wield a power, roll a d20 and add your presence modifier. If you get a 12 or more, you cast the spell. If you get an 11 or lower, the power doesn't work, and the caster takes d2 hit point damage and becomes dizzy and can't use powers for an hour. If the d20 was a 1, then that's a fumble. If you fumble when casting magic, you roll on the Arcane Catastrophes table, and one of 20 terrible things happen. It's possible that the earth could decay around you like wet flesh. You sink 3 feet and cannot climb out without help. Clinging to you, screaming and biting, are d4 translucent, crayfish-like children with your face. Or it's possible that a gnashing, gap-toothed mouth splits open on your neck. It spits out your secrets and inner thoughts. And something the GM knows that the player might find out is that the mouth can be silenced to sleep only with blood. Or, as a last example, light itself despises you. If you gaze upon a candle, lamp, or torch, it goes out. Omens. Omens are like the devil's luck if you've played Pirate Borg, or glitches if you've played Cyborg. They're a limited, daily refreshing resource that you can spend to change the outcome of a dice roll. Your class will clarify how many omens you get each day, or if you don't have a class, you get D2 omens. You can spend an omen to do one of 5 things. You can spend an omen to deal maximum damage with one attack, or re-roll any dice, yours or someone else's. You can spend an omen to lower the damage dealt to you by a d6. You can spend an omen to neutralize a crit or fumble. Or lastly, you can spend an omen to lower one test's difficulty rating by 4. This can really impact a roll because the standard difficulty of things is 12, really simple tasks are 6, and nearly impossible tasks are 18. You can change that by spending an omen. When you build a character in Mork Borg, you will either choose or randomly roll for a class, and you don't need to play a class, you can be classless, but anyway, a class, abilities, weapon, armor, hit points, and maybe even character name. Let's build a character together. Every character starts with a water skin and D4 days worth of food, which, rolling for it, is 2 days of food. Let's roll a d6 and 2 d12 dice for your 3 starting equipment. The dice show a 6, a 10, and a 12, so this character has a donkey, a sealed bottle that deals d10 damage once, and a tent. It's optional in Mork Borg to gain a class. Let's do that since this is a demonstration. Rolling a d6, we'll build the class called 6, an Occult Herb Master. They begin with 2d6 times 10 silver, which rolling for it is 80 silver. They also get D2 omens at the start of each day, which for today is 1 omen available to spend. Occult Herb Masters are as tough as wood. They get 3d6 plus 2 for their toughness, which rolling for it is 10 plus 2 is 12, which translate to a modifier of plus 0. Let's roll 3d6 each for the other 3 stats. Agility is a 9, which is also a plus 0 modifier. Presence is a 7, which is actually a -1. And lastly, Occult Herb Master Strength is rolled at a -2, so that would have been a 14, but it becomes a 12, which is another plus 0. Hit points and carrying capacity are both calculated from the Strength modifier. Occult Herb Masters have HP equal to Toughness plus D6, so for this character that's rolling for it, 4. Only 4 hit points. Oof, yes, this is a brutal game with high lethality. This character's carrying capacity is Strength plus 8 normal-sized items with no problem, so that means they can carry 8 items such as a crowbar, lard, a scroll, or a torch without problem. I guess a tent and a sealed bottle put this character at 2, or maybe the donkey is carrying the tent? Not sure. Yeah, let's go with that. That makes sense. Anyway, continuing on the class page, the instructions say to roll a d2 for a weapon. That's a 2, a staff, a melee weapon that uses the strength ability and does d4 of damage. Occult Herb Masters also get a d2 on the armor table, so that's a 2, light armor. Subtract a d2 from all incoming damage. Nice. This character is carrying a portable laboratory, okay, and continually searches for frequently expended ingredients. Yeah, that donkey is definitely carrying the portable laboratory. Okay, it also says, every day this character has the materials to create 2 randomly determined decoctions and can brew a total of d4 doses. If unused, they lose vitality after 24 hours. Neat. There is a table here for what could randomly get brewed. Let's roll a d8 for today's decoctions. A 1 and a 6. The 1 is a red poison. The drinker must pass a toughness test with a difficulty rating of 12 or lose a d10 of hit points. Ooh. The 6 is Ferner's Filter. It is a translucent oil that must be dabbed into the eye. It heals infections. Oh, and gives a plus 2 on presence tests for d4 hours. Ooh, nice. The class gives us one more thing. The Occult Herb Master was, rolling for it, probably raised in an illegal midnight market. Ah, that explains how they learned their recipes. Okay, well, that ends all the things from that class page. There are some optional tables on pages 39 to 43, so let's roll for them. This character gets 2 terrible traits, which, rolling for it, they are shrewd and bitter. They have a physical impediment, which, rolling for it, is that their face is resting maniac face, which makes it hard to make friends. They have a bad habit, rolling for that. They have a permanent phlegm deposit in their throat. They cough continuously, snort and spit at all times. And they're also in massive debt. The debt is being traded to successively more ruthless groups. Oh, fun, fun. The last instruction in character creation is, quote, name your character if you wish, it will not save you. Okay, well, there's a table on the front inside book cover, so let's roll a d6 and then a d8 for their name. This is Mercury, the occult herb master. Mercury has 4 hit points, a +0 in toughness and agility and strength, and a -1 in presence. Mercury has a red poison and a Ferner's filter, and also a sealed bottle that deals d10 damage once. Mercury's donkey is loaded up with a tent and a portable laboratory. Mercury doesn't have a lot of friends, partly because of their resting maniac face, partly because they're a shrewd and bitter person, partly because they're in debt, and partly because they continuously cough, snort, and spit. That's Mercury. That's a unique character. All right, leveling up in Mork Borg affects 3 character aspects. You get more hit points, you find an item, and you change your abilities. To get more hit points, roll 6d10. If the result is equal to or greater than your current maximum hit points, increase your max HP by a d6. So 6d10, the minimum of that is literally like 6. That's gonna increase our hit points for Mercury by a d6 immediately, the first time we level up, so that would be a good thing. Roll on the table on page 33 to see what item you find. It could be a scroll, or some silver, or nothing. You can use that scroll to cast magic, you can use that silver to buy better weapons, or it could be nothing. And roll a d6 against each of your 4 abilities. If the result is equal to or greater than your modifier, increase it by 1. The max is +6, but unlike most games where leveling up can only improve you, if the d6 that you roll is below your ability modifier, decrease it by 1. If you roll a 1 on the d6, always decrease your ability modifier to, at most, a -3. For players in the upcoming game session I will be GMing, you can triple your starting silver money so you can afford to buy a few things. We're at 10% of maximum power level at this time in the year, so that amount of money won't be able to afford much, but it's slightly more than a starting character. Also, you're welcome to do 1 level up advancement if you'd like. I do acknowledge that leveling up can decrease your ability modifiers, so you don't have to if you don't want to. And that's everything to Mork Borg. Hopefully this little rules chat helps my players build their characters and understand how to play. For everyone listening, if you'd like to hear an example adventure, the episode of Firebreathing Kittens podcast right after this is a demonstration of us playing Mork Borg in a one-shot game session. We invite you to listen to it to hear an example of Mork Borg in action. We encourage you to find the Mork Borg rulebook yourself and play a game with friends.